The sun has not fully risen. You are already awake. Not because you have to be, because your body decided the night was over. There is no alarm beside you. There is no clock on a wall. There is only the sound of wind moving through grass and the low murmur of voices from the people sleeping near you. This is your life. 30,000 years ago, no calendar, no job, no wall separating you from the world outside. Just you, your group, and everything you need carried on your back or stored inside your memory. You sit up. Your bed is a layer of dried grass beneath animal hide. Your shelter is made of bent branches and skins, built in less than an hour by hands that have done this 100 times before. Around you, 20 to 30 people are stirring. This is your entire world. Every person you will see today, you already know. Every person you know, you will see today. Is that a small life, or is it the only kind of life your brain was ever built for? For most of human history, this was normal. Homo sapiens have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Agriculture, farming with planted crops and domesticated animals only began around 12,000 years ago. That means for 96% of the time humans have existed, this scene, waking in a small mobile group with no fixed address, which was simply what being human meant, anthropologist Richard Lee studied a modern hunter-gatherer group called the Juhansi, sometimes called the Kung, in the Kalahari Desert in the 1960s. His research became one of the most cited studies in anthropology. He tracked exactly how many hours adults spent finding food. The number surprised almost everyone who read it, around 15 hours a week, not 15 hours a day. 15 hours a week spent actually gathering and hunting food. The rest of the time was spent resting, socializing, making tools, telling stories, and doing what modern researchers would later call, almost enviously, leisure. You get up and step outside. The air is cool. Someone has already started a fire from embers kept alive overnight. You do not check messages. You do not scroll anything. Instead, you listen. An older woman is already talking, describing where she saw fresh animal tracks yesterday near the eastern ridge. A young man mentions a tree with ripening fruit 2 valleys over. This is your information network. No screens. Just memory, conversation, and trust. Anthropologist Wiessner spent years studying the Juhansi as well, focusing specifically on what people talked about around the fire at night versus during the day. During daylight hours, conversations were mostly practical. Who found what? Where the water was. But at night, around the fire, the talk shifted almost entirely to stories. Myths, gossip, jokes, relationships. Wiessner found that firelight itself seemed to change what people wanted to talk about, pulling attention away from complaints and toward connection. You are handed a share of food. Not because you earned it more than anyone else today, because sharing food is not optional here. It is the rule that keeps everyone alive. If you hunt and bring back meat, you do not get to keep it for yourself. It gets distributed, often in a very specific, almost ritualized way, across the entire group. Anthropologists call this practice extensive food sharing. It sounds generous. It is also incredibly practical. Hunting is unreliable. Some days you find nothing. If everyone only ate what they personally caught, half the group would starve during a bad week. But if food always gets shared, then one person's bad luck today is covered by someone else's good luck, and next week the roles might reverse. This single habit, built over hundreds of thousands of years, may be one of the reasons your brain still feels a pull toward fairness, toward reciprocity, toward the discomfort of taking more than your share. That feeling did not appear randomly. It was shaped by a world where hoarding could get your entire group killed. So let's reconstruct a full day morning. You walk with a small group, maybe 4 or 5 people, toward a patch of land known for edible tubers, roots that grow underground and store energy the plant needs to survive dry seasons. Digging them up takes skill. You use a hardened wooden stick, sharpened at the tip, to break through dry soil. This is not mindless labor. It requires reading the ground, recognizing which plants above the surface signal food below. Children nearby are watching closely. This is how they learn. Not through lessons at a desk, but by observing real work done by people they trust, again and again, until their hands remember it too. Midday. The heat rises. You rest in shade. This is not laziness. Working through the hottest hours of the day in an environment without shelter or water access can be dangerous. Your ancestors' schedules were built around the sun and the temperature, not around a fixed 9-to-5 structure invented tens of thousands of years later. Nearby, an older woman is minding several children who are not her own. This is not unusual. It is one of the most consistent patterns across hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists. Researcher Kristen Hawkes proposed what is now called the grandmother hypothesis, which the idea that older women who stopped having children of their own kept contributing enormously to the group's survival, gathering food and caring for grandchildren, freeing younger mothers to have more children sooner. Hawkes argued this cooperative childcare, spread across many adults instead of resting entirely on two parents, may be part of why humans evolved such unusually long lifespans compared to other primates. A grandmother here is not a retired member of the group. She is one of its most essential workers. Do you notice how many hands touch a single child's upbringing in this scene? Not one household isolated behind a door. A whole web of aunts, uncles, elders, and older children, all sharing the weight of raising the next generation after noon. A hunting party returns, not with a triumphant kill every time. Sometimes with nothing. That's normal too. Failure is baked into your food system daily. You do not panic. There is stored food. There are other people out gathering. The system is built to absorb loss because loss is expected evening. Fire, food, stories. There is a reason storytelling shows up again and again in research on hunter-gatherer societies. Stories were not entertainment in the way a modern screen is entertainment. They carried survival information disguised as narrative. Where dangerous animals tend to gather. Which plants are poisonous? What happens to people who cheat the group? Encoded into cautionary tales instead of written laws because writing did not exist yet. Some of the oldest evidence of this symbolic, story-driven thinking comes from Blombos Cave in South Africa, where archaeologists found engraved ochre pieces dating back roughly 75,000 years. Deliberate, repeated patterns carved into stone. Not tools, not weapons, symbols. Evidence that abstract thought, meaning-making, and possibly early forms of shared storytelling were already part of human life tens of thousands of years before agriculture existed. Even further evidence sits inside caves like Chauvet Cave in France, where painted images of horses, lions, and rhinoceroses, created more than 30,000 years ago, still exist on stone walls today. Whoever made those paintings had time, had community, had enough security in daily survival to spend hours creating something with no immediate nutritional value at all. Now here comes the twist. You might assume that once agriculture arrived, human life got dramatically better. More food, more stability, more civilization. In many ways, that assumption is wrong. Skeletal remains from early farming populations, compared to earlier hunter-gatherer populations, frequently show something surprising. Shorter average height. More evidence of malnutrition, more dental disease, more signs of repetitive physical strain from constant narrow tasks like grinding grain. Relying heavily on a small number of crops made early farming communities more vulnerable to famine when a single harvest failed, unlike hunter-gatherer groups who drew from dozens of different food sources across a landscape. Researcher James Suzman, who has spent years studying the Zhuangzi and writing about the deep history of human work, has argued that the shift to agriculture did not simply make life easier. In many cases, it meant longer working hours, more stored surplus for a smaller number of people to control, and the beginning of inequality on a scale that simply did not exist in small, mobile, sharing-based groups. Archaeologist Louis Binford, whose research helped shape how modern anthropologists reconstruct ancient lifestyles from bones and tools left behind, pointed out something else important. Mobility itself was a survival strategy. Moving camp every few weeks meant hunter-gatherer groups rarely stayed in one place long enough to exhaust local resources, or to let waste and disease build up around a fixed settlement. Farming reversed that. It tied people to one plot of land, for better and for worse, permanently. So why did agriculture spread at all, if it wasn't clearly better for individual well-being? Because it produced more food per unit of land, which meant it could support far larger populations, even if each individual life became, in some measurable ways, harder. Population growth, not personal well-being, is often what determined which way of life spread across the planet. Think about that for a moment. The version of human life you are living right now exists largely because of a system optimized for population growth and resource control, not necessarily the system optimized for how content, secure, or connected any single person feels day to day. Now bring this back to you. Sitting wherever you are right now, reading or listening to this, your brain was shaped inside small, tightly bonded groups where sharing was mandatory, where you knew everyone around you personally, where storytelling around a fire was the primary form of nightly entertainment, and where work happened in short, physically engaged bursts rather than stretched across long, isolated hours. That brain did not get an update when farming appeared. It did not get an update when cities appeared. It did not get an update for factories, offices, or smartphones. You are running ancient hardware inside an environment your ancestors would not recognize at all. That might explain why constant online contact can somehow leave you feeling more isolated than a small circle of people who actually know you. It might explain why unstructured rest can feel like it needs to be earned, when for most of human history, rest was simply built into every single day. It might explain why sharing something, a meal, your time, your attention, which still creates a kind of satisfaction that accumulating more alone rarely does. Think about your own group of trusted people right now, not your followers, not your contacts list. The people you would actually share your last meal with without hesitation, which for most people today, that number is small. For your ancestors 30,000 years ago, that number was simply everyone they knew, because everyone they knew was already that close. You woke up this morning, possibly to an alarm, which you will likely spend today mostly indoors, mostly seated, mostly surrounded by people you have never actually spoken to. 30,000 years ago, you would have woken up to daylight, spent your day moving, working in short bursts, and ended it surrounded by every person you knew, telling the same stories that have kept human groups alive for longer than any nation, religion, or invention has existed. The sun has not fully risen. And somewhere inside you, a version of yourself that is 300,000 years old is still waiting for the fire, the food, and the people who share both.